These remarks were especially notable because they came at the final phase of Crooks's YouTube commenting. At that point, a new character emerged into the conversation, a user named Willie Tepes, who started pressuring Crooks to commit violence. For example, quote, "If a gun and a badge is all that is needed, then authority obviously comes from the barrel of a gun. We have more guns than they do. There is no way we can avoid a war at this point, so you better just get used to the idea. We have nothing to lose and everything to win. And the alternative, a global police state, is unacceptable. Nothing in life is simple, but that is no argument against doing it." So who is this Willie Tepes? Unfortunately, we don't know. The FBI hasn't made any mention of him in public, although they certainly know he exists. Just days after the shooting, somebody screenshotted Tepes' YouTube account page, despite the fact he had very few followers. To the extent that he can be traced online now, you can find his username being used on a foreign Antifa website. Those sites link him to the Nordic Resistance Movement, which has been designated a terrorist group by the U.S. State Department. That's all we know. We do know, however, that Crooks' online footprint abruptly ends after his encounter with this mysterious figure, Willie Tepes. Regardless of whoever Willie Tepes is or was and what his motives may have been, who he may have been working for, there is no doubt that Crooks was ripe for recruitment by someone. From early 2019 to mid-2020, as his political views were evolving, Crooks searched for Trump more than 700 times online. He also searched for Jack Ruby, the man who assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald. He then submitted queries for craziest chemical reactions, cars running over protesters, best places for mass shooting El Paso, Trump Civil War, Orlando shooting reaction, firing an AR-15 as fast as possible, fertilizer bomb, how to make napalm, how to make Molotov cocktail, mass shooting Canada, Oklahoma bombing, and sniper in Dallas shooting. He also searched for American Nazi Party, German National Anthem 1933-1945, Hitler's speeches with subtitles, neo-Nazis, and, quote, why gays need to go. So here you have a volatile, troubled, possibly mentally ill young man with a long record of espousing violence in public. The FBI clearly knew he existed. And then you have, at the very end of his years commenting in public, espousing violence, an exchange with a mysterious figure affiliated with a group that we know is being monitored by the U.S. State Department. It turns out that around the same time that Thomas Crooks was making these searches and posting overt threats of violence against public figures on YouTube, the FBI was issuing contracts to private sector tech surveillance firms to harness the power of mass data collection tools that would monitor social media for people just like Thomas Crooks. It's hard to imagine that Thomas Crooks, who was making these posts publicly and in his own name, had not been identified and looked at closely by federal law enforcement. In fact, it's impossible to imagine. What do we know? Well, we know that the FBI had access to these YouTube comments, and rather than giving us valuable information about them, giving us a sense of why Thomas Crooks did what he did, they used a selective read of those comments to lie about what Thomas Crooks was thinking. 2.5 weeks after the attack on July 30th, a source familiar with the investigation told CNN that, quote, federal investigators are looking into a YouTube account possibly connected to Crooks in which the user espoused political violence as well as anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes. Well, of course, it wasn't possibly connected to Thomas Crooks, as the FBI knew full well it was Thomas Crooks' account. There was never any question about that. And yet the same day, the FBI's then deputy director made the same dishonest claim before Congress. The week previous, then FBI Director Christopher Wray publicly questioned whether Trump was even shot.
With respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear.
In February 2025, the New York Post reported that, quote, the FBI has obstructed efforts to solve the mystery of why Thomas Matthew Crooks, who left no manifesto, did what he did. And this fact, said the Post, left local law enforcement as well as Crooks' former friends, classmates, and teachers frustrated. The level of lying and obstruction is shocking. Less than a month after the shooting, Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana, a former police officer, traveled to Butler to conduct his own investigation into what happened. When he arrived, he discovered a disturbing fact. The FBI released Crooks's body for cremation 10 days after July 13th. This wasn't known to the public until Higgins arrived in Butler on August 5th, when the coroner told the congressman, quote, he would never have released Crooks's body to the family for cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI. The timing of Crooks's cremation is notable. The day Crooks's body was burned was also the day the House Homeland Security and Oversight Committees had begun their investigations into the shooting. The fact the body was cremated made it impossible for investigators outside the FBI to verify the coroner and autopsy report. You can't do a new tox screen because the body doesn't exist.